right now, and maybe I'll even leave this into the show because it's worth recommending, that I watched Warrior a few days ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've been that destroyed, and by destroyed, sitting on my bed like weeping
Yeah.
by a movie maybe in 5 years. Like Inside Out is probably the last one I can think of.
Yeah.
That really, where I was just like bawling watching this movie. It's an incredible movie. It really
I
is
agree,
beautiful.
I agree. That's why I've been telling you to watch it all these years.
Yeah, did you see it when it came
good.
out? Like
no. I think I came across it randomly at one point. It must have been on Netflix or something. I just watched it. I hadn't heard anything about the movie, so I kind of just went in cold.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was absolutely blown away. Isn't the final, like the third act of that movie is just stunning. It's stunning.
At a certain point I was just like, oh wait, he's just gonna show the entire, it's just gonna be a tournament. It's just gonna be a tournament to the very end. But at a certain point in that movie, and you can probably get a sense of this in other great films, because it's not a movie that is immediately apparent that it's great. Like the way it's shot is kind of shaky, and it's clear he's not like a brilliant director.
Right. Yeah.
But at a certain point, about an hour into the movie, I'm like, every decision he's making, every scene is making me care more about the characters.
Right.
Everything is ramping up the emotions and just making me more and more compelled in the situation. The unraveling of the Iraq stuff with Tom Hardy is just fascinating. And everything, I think there's like the moment where then the wife is at the fight at the end, where I was like, oh, that's even more exciting. That's even more. And that was the point where I was like, this guy is basically in a zone where he can do no wrong, and everything he's doing is just making the movie better and better. But even having said all that, and having said how great Nick Nolte is.
Oh, he's fantastic. I mean, he
really
really
the hotel room, like, oh my god.
I think that's one of my favorite scenes. I mean, it's that one so incredible, and in conjunction with the one before that, where he says, "I liked you better when you were a drunk." Is just like, I mean, it's just devastating. You know, it's just so devastating.
Yeah, I mean, it is a real. The movie is really probing pretty painful, subject matter. What was the other scene where Nolte shows up at Joel Edgerton's? Oh, it's Mick already.
Hey.
Oh. Hey Mick,
all
we're
right.
just talking about another movie. I didn't know you were going to show up this early. Okay. Well, I guess I should sort of intro what we're talking about. I mean, today we are talking about the films of Clint Eastwood in honor of his 90th birthday, which comes up in a couple days. Okay. And I know, Mick, you came to his work a little bit later, or you started liking his work a little bit later than some people, as Eastwood himself acknowledged, I believe, because he reads you, right?
His wife, who's now his ex-wife, said that he reads everything.
Oh, okay.
And because she came to a class once, and she said to me, he reads everything. And I said, yeah, what is he? And what does he say? And she said, he says that, what was it? Something like, he used to give me a hard time, but now he's all right.
Yeah. What do you think is the first movie of his in the 90s that you gave a good review to? I mean, because
well, I mean, I've always liked him. I'm not. That's interesting. I'd have to go back. I mean, let's see. Like, I'm not sure if I like Bloodwork or not.
I think you like Absolute Power. Actually, I feel like I read that.
I loved Absolute Power.
Yeah, that's a fun movie.
And Bloodwork, I'm not sure if I liked or not. What is that? What year is that?
Bloodwork is 2002. That's sort of right before the really great period where he gets into his 70s. Actually, just starting off, did you was Eastwood someone you followed, as a kid? I mean, he's been around for so long. It's pretty amazing.
All right, so I never saw Rawhide. Rawhide is a little bit before my time. I think that was like in the
that's like 50s.
Ended around 1965, so I would have been like 5 or 6 when that show went off the air. And then I've never been into like male genres, just particularly. Right. I only the movies that I like generally have women in them. And so I didn't gravitate, so any westerns or anything. I never particularly liked Sergio Leone movies. To me, they're like a lot of like the foreign noirs. I mean, a lot of times we have genres that we really do well, and that have all the American filmmaking virtues of being concise and being heavy on story.
Mm.
And then Europeans take our forms and then just bloat them out and make them really self-important. And so you get the like the Yakuza movies.
Cameron's over here very quietly disagreeing because I know he loves the Leone movies.
I do love them. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I guess my first introduction to Eastwood was Fistful of Dollars. I think I saw that in like 6th grade or something. So I've kind of grown up as that being almost like the template of the Western, and then I filled that back in with Ford movies. But
which one is that one? Which one is Fistful of Dollars?
Fistful of Dollars is the first of the trilogy.
With who?
With Clint Eastwood. It's
I mean, like who else is in it?
Hold on, let me look.
It's all Italian guys. That was the first one. I think it might have been
yeah.
Clint's first lead role.
I think it was.
I don't think I've
yeah.
ever seen it.
Yeah. It's entertaining. These movies, I was watching Unforgiven last night, Mick, and as much as I love that movie and think that movie is like a masterpiece, watching it with the context of knowing that you didn't like it when you reviewed it, I can kind of understand it because it is very slow and it is very male-centric, and it's I can understand watching, especially if you're tired watching it. There are definitely moods where I could watch it.
Yeah, I know. I saw it at 1 in the afternoon. Yeah, I didn't particularly like it. I see it now, and I think it's good. Good movie. For some reason, sometimes just things hit you strangely. I mean, it's much more random than critics say. It could have been my mood. I don't really know why I wasn't all that crazy about it. But I mean, I think, it's not because I don't like Westerns very much, but it could be just that I don't like Westerns very much. Mm. Also, too, that movie is like very referential. It seems to be like a summing up of Westerns, and I never really care about that. Just like, I mean, like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. A lot of people love that movie. Mm-hmm. I completely hate it. I just think I think it's like a bad movie.
Wow.
Actually.
I've never seen it, so I can't.
Well, I mean, there's so much just stops me. I mean, including James Stewart's performance and also his miscasting. He's playing a young guy, and then I just don't enjoy it. And also, but I don't particularly like John Ford. And we're talking about I mean, I could say, oh yeah, John Ford. I could play along and say John Ford is a great filmmaker, which I actually think he is anyway. But when we're getting in the realm of preference, I'm just not crazy about those movies. I much rather watch. I mean, the great Western to me from that period is the Howard Hawks one, Red River. Mm. But then that one is, that's about, that's like a father and son movie, to me. That was that movie. But anyway, I'm not sure. I think I've seen Pale Rider. I'm not sure if I've even seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. It's possible I have. It's just that like the one with there's one with Henry Fonda.
Oh, right? Leon, Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's not with Clint Eastwood, but there's one with Henry Fonda.
No, it's not.
And I lasted about 45 minutes with that one.
Well, that one, I haven't seen the whole thing, but that doesn't start with a 20-minute sequence where they're just like swatting flies and waiting at a train station for. I watched a bit of that with you at the door, Cameron. I think I was sitting on my bed and then I went to sleep because.
Well, it starts off with a very long, drawn out. I mean, it is a dual sequence. So there's a gunfight that it's surrounding, but again, I mean, it's got some of that. What you're talking about is the sort of Western referential filmmaking, especially using Henry Fonda as the villain is kind of the main sort of the crux of the movie in a certain sense. Yeah. So I mean, if obviously if that's not what you enjoy, it's kind of that part is a little bit lost in translation. I think especially nowadays.
I'll sit through. It's just there's plenty of movies that are in genres that I like that I'll have no problem sitting through and then can explain to people like how you could like it if you approach it from this angle. But also too, a lot of times in the case of Leone movies, not Unforgiven, which is not a Leone movie, but in the case of Leone movies, it is true that I've tried to watch them a little bit late in the day. And you start watching, a movie, the guys are swatting flies for 40 minutes, and then you just, you wind up giving up. And then, but, like I saw a movie that we showed in a class at Stanford, some French movie that I watched and I hated. And then I apologized to everybody before I showed it, because I said, you probably won't like this, but my wife really liked it. And then I saw it again. I thought it was really good because I was awake.
Which movie was that? Was that one I was here for?
Yeah, I think it was called See You Up There. It was about the guy.
Yeah, that was pretty good. It was kind of like a Jean-Pierre Jeunet kind of movie, right?
A little bit, yeah.
But anyway, so but to get back to Eastwood, the focus today, I kind of want to talk about his films as a director, because oddly, despite how long he's worked as a filmmaker, it seems like the movies that still stick in people's minds are the ones he didn't direct. I mean, Dirty Harry and The Man with No Name, I think, are still his most well-known characters. And as his
performances,
yeah. But people seem to, it's like they conflate Eastwood as that character with the Eastwood who makes these movies, and I think that's part of why a lot of his recent movies have been interpreted in this way, that is sort of interprets him as this sort of machismo movie star, when the movies he makes as a director, I wouldn't say are in that vein at all.
No, they're not. I have I wrote this about 10 years ago. I have Eastwood's obituary that we've been holding for. We've been holding
for another 10 years. Yeah,
I hope so. Yeah, but this one, I think I wrote this in 2010, and I've been holding on to it. And I just read it to refresh my memory. Some of the things about him he's a hard guy to wrap your mind around, because, first of all, he was a huge action star. He was a TV star before that, but nobody cares about that anymore. But he was a huge action star. And then he became a director. And then, really unique among the filmmakers, of history, he got better in his 70s. And that's unheard of. If you accept, which I can accept, just I can accept because of the consensus of critics, that Unforgiven is a great movie, which I think it probably is, and I just don't particularly like it, or hit me wrong.
Sure.
Even then, he made one great movie. I don't think anybody would say that anything he made before that was a great movie. He made really good movies. I mean, I love Absolute Power. He made some really fun movies.
I was going to ask you, actually, are there any of the movies from the 70s and 80s that you particularly like? Because that period is there's some other than Josie Wales, which I actually do think is a great movie. I wouldn't say any of the other movies are, Honky Tonk Man is pretty good, but I'm not sure if there are any others you would recommend from that period.
I mean, Tightrope was kind of interesting. These things.
He didn't direct that, though. I think that was
he didn't direct that one? Okay.
Someone else.
He didn't direct it. I thought he did. Okay.
He might be credited, because I think he might have directed some of the movie. Like, he fired the director, which he did with Josie Wales, by the way. He's very, when he gets a director who he thinks is taking too long, which happened with Josie Wales. Philip Kaufman was directing the film, and then he's like, this guy's taking way too long. So on one day where Kaufman was off somewhere else, he directed the scene and they all left, and then he just fired Kaufman and took over the whole film.
He's just hard to. This is the thing, okay? Most of the time, when somebody's like a great artist, right, they kind of leave the scholars of the future some clues as to how to approach their work, to make it easy for them to say this guy is great, because they usually just make it easy. Some leave their notes behind. We're talking about literature, or they make pronouncements about art. And Clint Eastwood, if you were to just listen to what Clint Eastwood says and then look at his movies, you would think that every great movie he made was just a series of accidents.
Right.
I mean, if anybody asks him, how'd you make this movie? He always just gets that kind of goofy, smug look on his face, right? He just kind of smiles and says, well, you just get the actors and you put them in front of the camera, and then you film them. And if it looks good, you go on to the next thing. He always gives you answers like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so you have to, but but he keeps on making great movies. So what's going on? Okay, is he the luckiest guy in the world? Okay, I guess that might be possible, but I don't think so. Or is there something about him, like Valeria Bruni-Tedeschi, the French actress, Italian French actress, said that Claude Chabrol, who never like said anything on the set, like he would never tell you how to do a scene. She said, yeah, but he was so powerful that you knew what to do just with him sitting there. So maybe that's actually possible. I don't know.
Yeah,
so
I mean,
maybe,
there's other guys like that too, like Woody Allen, who don't talk to the actors a lot, right? I mean,
yeah, but then he eventually does, and he kind of quietly does. I mean, but Chabrol is like really like you say to him, what should I be thinking about? What should I be doing? And he'd say, I hired you to act, and I'll direct it. You act it. Go away. So everybody, though, they know that they're only going to get like 2 shots, and so they really just absolutely make a strong choice and go with it because they know that that's their only shot. With Clint Eastwood, so maybe he exudes something. Well, the other thing is that maybe he's just a really okay. The other one is there's one more. One is that he's a really sensitive artist, and he just beautifully composes everything in because of some emotional vision that he has. But then the final one is that he's a very practical artist. There's some people who like that if you put this together and you put this together in a kind of alchemical way, you'll get this kind of emotional response, even if you're not feeling it yourself. And so he might be like in possession of a certain vision, and you say, okay, yeah, I'm going to put the camera there, and you're going to get the feeling of it. But all his best movies, like Million Dollar Baby, I think The Hereafter is a great movie. It feels like shot by shot, he is advancing a kind of directorial viewpoint. He's just a real artist, but he doesn't act like one. So he's going to be very enigmatic forever, and I don't know if that's going to help him or not. I mean, a lot of times it helps to give some, leave some breadcrumbs for people to follow critically. But I think that he's made some really profound work, and I mean he's put it this way, okay? Let's say if he wasn't an actor and he just made these movies, right? He would be considered like one of the great directors of the last 50 years. Right? Let's say if he never made any movies, but he was just in all the movies that he was in, he would be considered one of the huge stars of the last 50 years.
Yeah, definitely.
It's sort of like finding out like that. It's like you find out that like Sylvester Stallone and Scorsese were the same guy. You know what I mean? I mean, he's not as good as Scorsese because he's not good for as long a period of time.
Sure.
But it's kind of like that. It's like they're the same guy, and now you have to figure that out, and it is very hard to figure out. And as a result, he just remains kind of an enigma. I have no idea. I mean, you see the guy. You see him talking. He goes in front of the Republican convention. He talks to a chair.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's like, so he seems like a guy from like a middle America, like well-off Rotary Club guy, and you don't really feel like he has like any kind of emotional depths, and then you see his movies and they're amazing. So I don't know.
And his movies are particularly full of emotion too. I mean, he really probes incredibly serious subject matter and depressing subjects in a way that even Scorsese doesn't. I mean, his movies are full of people who are dying and war and pain and suffering. I mean, it's really strange when you look at him. I know what you mean.
I know, it's like you just see this guy, and it's like, I mean, I remember I was in France. I remember I got up in the morning to see how Romney's speech went over.
Uh-huh.
And I got online, and all anybody was talking, so it's in the morning, but in France, right? So it's like in the middle of the night in the United States.
Right.
And I'm seeing all anybody see is chair. That's all anybody's talking about is a chair. So what's this about a chair? And then nobody's talking about Romney's speech, and all they're talking about is Clint Eastwood's chair speech. So you see this guy, and it's like that. I mean, the guy who thinks that's funny directed the Hereafter.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I was going to ask you about Hereafter actually, because that movie I just saw for the first time very recently, and I thought it was very good. But I'd be curious to hear you elaborate on what because that to you is one of his best movies.
Yeah, I think it is.
And if you tell me, and also you write about his Olympian vision. That's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I love that phrase, and I feel like I don't have a complete handle on what you mean by that, but it sounds right. You know,
it's like he's writing it from like he's watching it. It's like he's watching the characters from a godlike perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That movie is one of a whole bunch of movies like from that time, like Babel and Crossing Over and some other movies that try to like give you like a feeling of the world, and I think his is the only. And then there's another one that almost does it, but doesn't quite do it. The movie Beautiful, which is I think maybe a couple of years later.
Right. Same year actually. Yeah.
What? 1 year later? 2011.
Yeah, I think it was 2010 actually. Yeah.
2010.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So anyway, that's another one. I think that one almost does it, but there's a kind of movie that tries to basically sum up the feeling of being alive in a moment in time by showing a whole bunch of different people, and he's the only one who really I think fully succeeds. And this I don't know. I'm looking at my review because I don't really remember the movie that much. So what did I say? I said every shot communicates something precise, whether it's plot detail or a specific thought or emotion. I said that as an actor, Eastwood is used to breaking up a script into a succession of specific actions. You know, like when you're an actor and you're doing a script, you say, okay, what am I trying to do here? Like in a scene, you break up a scene, say, what's my intention here? What's my action here? I'm trying. You're trying to do something, right? So I was saying that like as a director, he's sort of breaking it up in the same thing, and it's very meticulous. So it's like not. It's the opposite. This is a very. His approach is very not self-important. It's like building blocks. He doesn't assume like an attitude of like this is a really grave, important movie. He just one by one just does like a series of actions. He doesn't. He spends time with every person, or he makes everybody vivid. And that what I say is the ironic result of all this meticulous care is that we don't see his hand, but rather have the illusion that this gallery of humanity is telling the story for him. But of course, he's the one who's actually doing it. But it's like a hidden hand thing, and it's a very self-effacing way to do great work. So anyway, that was my reaction at the time. I'd love to see it again, and see.
There's some really wonderful scenes in that movie, and I think Matt Damon. Well, the whole thing with Matt Damon and Bryce Dallas Howard, where he meets that girl at the cooking class, and then they sort of form this connection that is then immediately shattered when he has, when he touches her, basically, when he has the vision of her dead relatives, I guess, basically. It's just a really powerful moment.
Yeah, that would definitely be a block in any relationship. With somebody you see all the dead relatives there.
I think it's also just interesting because it seems like in some ways that movie is attempting to do the kind of movie that a lot of Christian films seem to be trying to make.
Oh, yeah?
In recent years. You probably don't even review these because they don't come out in San Francisco, but Cameron has seen some of these like movies, like they're called like God's Not Dead or something, where someone has a vision of the afterlife and they come back with proof of the afterlife or proof that God exists. And they're all sort of these movies that, Cameron, you could speak to them more, but I think they sort of infantilize Christian faith in some ways and are sort of to make you feel comforted. Is that how you describe them, Cameron?
Yeah, well, I'd just say that they're essentially propaganda. They're towards a specific audience, and they have a very obvious viewpoint. And so like these, they don't have I guess they don't like ascend to any sort of artistic level, because they're just there to reconfirm what what the audience already believes. So I mean, I haven't seen Hereafter, but it would be interesting to approach that perspective in a way that is that's actually like challenging, you know.
Yeah, challenging, right. I really like King of Kings. I think that's a good Christian movie. You ever see that?
I've never seen that
No.
one. Have you seen Cameron? No. Yeah,
It's a good movie.
I've been meaning to watch that because that's the one that I've heard you recommend before.
Yeah, the only thing wrong with it is that well, there's two things wrong with it. Makes it hard. I mean, all right, three things wrong with it. One is that Jesus as a character can't really go anywhere because he has to like come in perfect and go out perfect.
Right.
So they have to locate the action in another character in some ways, and then they locate the action in Barabbas, who's like starting a slave revolution or a revolution of the Jews, and it's not a slave revolution, that's Spartacus, but the revolution of the Jews, that's okay, but then they get to play Barabbas, they get Harry Gardino, who has a New York accent that's much thicker than mine, and then so that's kind of ridiculous. And then the other thing that is a little bit problematic is that at certain points you realize that Jesus is wearing a wig. And so then you say, okay, so what's going on? It's either you realize that Jeffrey Hunter is wearing a wig, and which takes you out of the movie, or you say that Jesus is wearing a wig. If Jesus is wearing a wig, you have to ask yourself, like, why is he doing that? Why doesn't he just like make his hair grow, right?
Right.
So because who would go through life like this? Or maybe he likes being bald, but then why is he wearing a wig? It just does. And then if he's wearing a wig, why isn't he wearing a good wig? You start
a lot of things to reconcile. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of things. It's kind of a problem. But if you if you get past those things, it's really beautiful. It has some great things in it, and really really moving things in it.
I think something about to get back to Hereafter, something that that works about it is the fact he's not pushing an agenda. You don't feel like he's trying to convince you of anything, and I think that's also true of a lot of his movies, including the ones that get controversy for pushing an agenda. Like I think a lot after the chair speech at Romney's convention, there were movies he would make these movies like American Sniper and Richard Jewell that people would watch sort of and interpret as a right wing propaganda. Or I mean, they said American Sniper was a pro-war patriotic film, and I didn't think so. I've seen it twice. I think it's so far from the truth.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's about a guy who has something wrong with him.
Yeah,
that's what I thought. I thought what the movie was. But I could be completely wrong. This is the thing about Eastwood. He never shows you what he's thinking, right?
Yeah.
He never tells you what he's thinking.
Yeah.
That movie has been praised by right-wingers as being like a movie about an American hero. And I watched that movie and I thought, this is a movie about a guy with something wrong with him. And it's also like what happens to somebody when they go around killing people. Like it starts making them a little bit nuts.
Oh yeah, definitely. So,
yeah, and it's not I didn't think of it as a pro-war movie at all. It's not like a criticism of the guy either. It's like it's sort of like just a kind of autopsy of that kind of mentality. I thought it was a serious movie. I knew when I saw it though, I said, oh wow, he's gonna fool everybody. Everybody's going to say, oh, this is like the greatest pro-war movie. I love it. It's so pro-war. And nobody's going to get what it really means.
And everyone
of course, he'll never say.
Of course. And people he has said he thinks it's an anti-war film. When people asked him, he's like, no, this is an anti-war film.
Oh, he does say that?
Yeah, he did. And which he said about many of his movies. I mean, he was against the Iraq war politically. I mean, and he's not a Trump Republican by any stretch. I mean, he's been pro-LGBT. He's much more of a libertarian. I think that's generally what he's affiliated with.
That is what he is. Yeah.
Yeah. But that
and
movie,
I wonder how he is now. I wonder what he probably won't say. He'll never talk.
He sort of. What's that?
Does he ever say anything about Trump?
I think he said. I can't remember now. I don't want to get it wrong, but I think he sort of said he liked Trump over Hillary, but then that at a certain point he just said he didn't like either of them. And then the most recent political thing was that he said he wanted Bloomberg to win the election this year. And then that angered a lot of his Republican fan base. I mean, he just goes back and forth of just angering everyone, it seems like. His $1 Million Baby, all these religious people came out saying it was a movie that was pro euthanasia and it was propaganda for right to die and all these. It's like, he's not thinking about these things at all.
I don't think
he's telling a story.
I don't think he was thinking about Richard Jewell. Richard Jewell is supposed to be against the press and pro-Trump. I don't think that's that. I don't think that.
I mean, I think Richard Jewell. I just watched it today, actually, this morning. I think it's much more about. It's much more anti-government and anti-authority than it is. I mean, it's anti-press to a certain degree. I mean, I guess it's just against coming to conclusions. I saw it as sort of. He shows this journey of a man coming to terms with the fact that authority can be wrong. Authority can be just as bad as anything else. So
I mean, look at the guy. What's going on in Minneapolis. I mean, that could be a story about how authority could be wrong. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that's a point of view that doesn't really have a political agenda, or at least not specific political.
No, I mean, Spike Lee has made films that have criticized those exact things: FBI, police, media. He's made a number of films about the media. I think if a different filmmaker made this film, people would have read into it as a left-wing film.
Could be, yeah. I think you're absolutely right.
I appreciate that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I think that you're right. And I forgot about Richard Jewell. That means that Richard Jewell came out this year, right? 2019? No,
2019.
2019. So he's still making good movies. Like he's releasing a good, really good, solid movie. Not one of his best, but really would be somebody else's best. I mean, that's a really good movie. When he's 89 years old.
Yeah.
That's got to be like some kind of record. But
and he did 2 movies the year before that at 88 too.
Yeah, and those are bad, right? He did the train movie.
Well, the train one was bad. The Mule, I think, is worth seeing, and I think the Mule could very well be the last movie he stars in, because he seems like he's acting more and more infrequently, and and that gets pretty hard when he's directing and starring in this movie at 88. I mean, when has that been done? But I thought that was a pretty solid movie, and a nice. If it ends up being his last movie as an actor, it's a nice one to go out on, because it sort of does feel like a summing up of his whole career.
I never saw it just because he didn't allow that to be screened for critics, and so I just didn't bother to see it.
Yeah,
because he didn't write about it.
Yeah, it's more low key than like Gran Torino or $1 Million Baby. It doesn't have dramatic things happening constantly.
Yeah.
But it's a nice movie. We're watching it for our film club actually on Sunday. All the Stanford guys and us are watching it. So we'll see. I'll see what they think of it. I don't know. Everyone I've shown it to, though, my family likes it.
You're talking about the Mule.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. I'd be curious. The train one is bad though.
Yeah, the train one is bad because I mean that one's even more meandered, because first he cast the real guys as themselves.
That's pretty weird.
And that's a shaky thing for a guy who doesn't direct the actors. You know what I mean? Like there are certain guys who can get a great performance out of someone who's unknown or someone playing themselves. But I mean, look at Paul Greengrass with the United 93, where he got all those guys playing themselves. But with Eastwood, it seems like he just said them, oh, just go do what you did on your vacation. So half of the movie is them eating gelato and wandering around Europe. And I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, it's so weird that people have gone back around, and there's like a group of people who think the movie's a masterpiece. They think it's like a postmodern, avant-garde masterpiece. So I don't know. Man. He has an interesting following these days. That seems a combination of either right-wing conservatives who think he's Dirty Harry, or this sort of small sector of young socialists. Young people on Twitter who call themselves Clint heads, and they love all his late work, and they think Sully is a masterpiece, and it's just very strange.
Well, and also just to point out though, Dirty Harry is not the hero of that movie. Not really. I mean, again, that touches on a lot of the themes that he picks up in later movies, right? It talks a lot about sort of the failings of authority, and like vigilantism, and sort of, especially what I watched Mystic River last night too, and I loved that movie. I thought it was great. But that touches on. It was reminding me weirdly of Dirty Harry in the way that it was speaking to the sort of what happens when you take the law into your own hands, and same with Unforgiven as well. Unforgiven is sort of the Western appropriation of that idea. And again, it Unforgiven is entirely about it's about lawlessness, but then it's also about tyranny. So it's very interesting that he finds a way to strike this balance. And again, Richard Jewell is a perfect example of that too, because he goes from someone who has like this idealization of authority. He idealizes the police, and he thinks the FBI would be the greatest job you could ever do, and then he goes from that and gets dragged through the mud, and in the end he still becomes a police officer. You know what I mean? He's still. It's very interesting how he's able to I guess strike that balance.
It reminded me actually oddly a lot of BlacKkKlansman, of how the movie climaxes with his just being completely alienated from this organization and from authority and from the system, but he still at the end decides to stay within it and they both end up staying police officers. And I think both are just these really interesting movies about the two-sidedness of law enforcement. And it's explored in a way, in a medium that I think either very often vilifies or valorizes police. I think both movies have a very interesting perspective.
I'm over here looking at his filmography as a director. So let's see. Can we go through them?
Yeah, sure. I mean,
okay. So Play Misty for Me is good. I never High Plains Drifter. I think I've seen that. I think that's pretty good.
It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Breezy. I don't know.
That's with William Holden, where he falls in love with a 19-year-old girl, or I think he's 19. It's kind of a nice movie, actually. It feels like a Woody Allen movie or something, and not just because of the age difference, but just because it's like a low-key romance,
The Eiger Sanction. I never saw that one either.
That's the one where he's mountain climbing, and it's terrible.
Okay. The Outlaw Josie Wales. I'm not sure if I saw that.
Great.
The Gauntlet I have seen. That was solid, good movie. Bronco Billy. This is before my critic days. I've never seen that.
I've seen all of them. This is the occasion. This is also that I watched all his movies over the last year, all as a director. I saw Bronco Billy, and it's sort of interesting, and you're seeing him going in an interesting way. That's not just a genre movie, but it's not great.
Okay, so then Honky Tonk Man.
That's actually very good.
Okay, Sudden Impact. That was good, and it was also so culturally huge.
Well, the first scene at the diner, Make My Day, is
that's amazing.
Great. Yeah,
but he just Clint Eastwood knows who Clint Eastwood is as an actor. He just really knows. He's one of the best directors in drama, directing himself. But that Go Ahead, Make My Day was just such a cultural moment. I mean, everybody was going around. Ronald Reagan was going around saying, "Go ahead, make my day." Everybody was saying it. When people were in, like, I was in a movie theater. I think I was seeing Flashdance, and they had the coming attractions for this. And when he said, "Go ahead, make my day," everybody like fell out of their chairs laughing. It was like considered like it was considered wonderful. It really was.
Yeah. It's underrated how funny he is, actually. He's as an actor too. Yeah. In all of his movies, he's very funny. Sorry, what was the other one you said to me?
Oh, okay. So we go to Pale Rider. I think that's good.
It's all right. I don't know. I just rewatched. I didn't like that much, but
okay. Grading on a curve for westerns because coming in, I don't like Bird. A Heartbreak Ridge. That I do not know. I did not see that.
That's the other where he plays a drill sergeant. It's kind of fun. I don't know. All the 80s ones I feel very mixed about, other than Honky Tonk Man.
Bird's pretty good, right?
I wasn't crazy about Bird. Bird, he makes basically a 3-hour movie about Charlie Parker, and it just jumps around. I think he was trying to make it sort of a movie like jazz music, where it kind of just jumps from different places in his life, but it makes the movie just incredibly slow. And I don't know, a lot of people like it, but I found it pretty dull.
White Hunter, Black Heart. I remember that's like okay. I like people.
Yeah,
Like
it's okay.
The Rookie, I think is that's one with Charlie Sheen.
Charlie
right?
Sheen, yeah, it's terrible. Yeah.
That's bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unforgiven. Okay, that's a good one. The Perfect World. Is that the one with Costner?
Mm-hmm.
I like that one.
Yeah,
I thought
that's
that was
wonderful.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bridges of Madison County. It's what it is. It's not bad.
That's the one that oddly has a big following now. Like a lot of people,
Yeah.
it seems like maybe younger people like it. I thought it was wonderful. I watched it with my grandma because I thought she would like it. And halfway through, she's like, can we turn it off? Can we watch something else? And we watched Unstoppable, the Tony Scott movie instead.
That's good. Bridges of Madison County. Okay. Absolute Power. I love that. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil is really good.
That's solid.
True Crime.
That's one where he guy's falsely accused. He's on death row, and Eastwood has to clear his name.
Okay, I don't know if I even remember that.
That's fun. He plays a Oakland Tribune reporter, and there's a lot of local stuff you recognize in that movie, and it's pretty entertaining.
Okay, then we got Bruce American, Absolute Power, True Space Cowboys. People like that kind of thing. Blood Work. Blood Work. I don't remember whether I liked it or not. I remember seeing it, and I thought it was. I mistakenly saw it as valedictory. I thought it was like going to be his last movie.
Oh, yeah, 72.
Yeah, because it's about a guy who's like old and sick or something.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
something wrong with him. And I remember I saw it and I said, "Oh yeah, Eastwood is like winding down now. This is like his farewell."
Yeah.
And then after that, boom! It's just one thing after another.
Yeah.
So then you get Mystic River. It's really good, really, really, really good. $1 Million Baby. Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. They're not great, but they're like a great achievement.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Changeling, I thought it was really.
I think that's wonderful.
Exceptional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really way up there.
Yeah.
Gran Torino is.
I find it very entertaining and very funny, but it is pretty corny movie, I guess.
Yeah, the thing he says to those guys when he gets out of the car, that's really
Oh
good.
yeah, yeah. Ever come across someone once in a while you shouldn't have fucked with?
Yeah. And then because that was like an attempt to like do a go ahead make my day or
yeah, absolutely.
Lucky. Then you get Invictus is not as good as it should have been, or could have been, but I thought it was good. It's a good, at this point.
It's a nice movie. Yeah.
Yeah, at this point you want everything to be a masterpiece. I mean, the problem I had with the movie was just kind of ridiculous, but it just took 20 minutes to get used to Morgan Freeman not sounding like Morgan Freeman.
Right.
That's a ridiculous criticism, but when you use a big star like that, that's what happens.
My criticism was it ended with the 20 minutes of just the game. That was to me where it kind of fell down a little bit, just showing you the game.
Yeah. Hereafter, it was great. J. Edgar, it's good. I don't think it's great, but
yeah, I liked
it's
it.
definitely good. Jersey Boys, good movie.
Yeah. I didn't like it the first time, but I just revisited it, and it's kind of nice. Yeah.
I mean, this is so much B+, A- or A material, one after the other.
Mm-hmm.
American Sniper, it's much better than people think because it's much more subtle than people think.
Definitely.
Sully, I think, is not so great, but it's a good story. It's kind of fun. I think one of the things I'm not crazy about is that I think it's a little bit factually off because I don't really recall that Sully was
persecuted.
Ever that much in trouble.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm more okay with movies if they're dramatizing something in a way that makes it more exciting or makes it make sense. But in this case, it's so ridiculous that a guy that Captain Sullenberger would be investigated in that way when everyone survived. It's like it's just sort of silly. But the actual crash sequence and that whole thing is well done. Yeah.
And then the other two I have not seen, and Richard Jewell is really good. So pretty amazing. Amazing filmography and a real case of like life almost beginning at 70. If you do it like life begins at 60, like take him from like Unforgiven on, his batting average is absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah.
It's really so many good movies. I mean, if Bridges of Madison County is like one of the not good movies, which I don't. I mean, it's like a mediocre. It's on this list. Bridges in Madison County, which would be considered a good movie, is actually one of the more lackluster pictures of the last, his last third of his career since he's 60, and that's really, totally respectable movie.
Oh yeah.
So, and ultimately vaguely moving. Anyway, yeah, pretty good guy.
Well, Mick, I don't know if you want to head out now. I think you've gone over your allotted time you mentioned, but
yeah, that's good. No, that's fine. I'll take off. Anything you want to ask me before I leave?
Cameron, do you have anything? I mean,
no. I was just going to touch on, I guess, a little bit of his acting with like non-actors. I think that's kind of for me, that's his like biggest misstep, is when he chooses non-actors. In Gran Torino is really actually one of the things that held me back. Was I didn't really feel connected to like the other family. Just, I don't know, it wasn't just not. I think it's a mistake for him, especially as a director who lets actors go free. Lets them kind of. I was actually reading something interesting about Mystic River. Was the scene with Looney in the liquor store when he's talking about the gun, how it's a 2-man job, blah blah blah. He just let I forget his name, but he just let him go in one take. Yeah, Eli Wallach. Yeah. He just let Eli Wallach go on one take. He didn't give him any instruction or anything. So for a director like that, who like really shines when there's someone like with a track record, like right. I don't think it's a good idea for him to put non-actor in. It just doesn't work for him. I don't know. That would be my only, I guess, like criticism of him.
Sure.
In the big picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so Mick,
and you're right. He didn't direct Tightrope.
Oh, okay, yeah, but I think he did take it over from the guy halfway through. In closing, Mick and Cameron, we're gonna continue a little more ourselves after Mick goes. But before you go, Mick, if you were to recommend, like, what would be your top 5 you'd recommend to people?
Okay, definitely $1 Million Baby, definitely Hereafter. So right off the top, those, and then we go to Changeling. I just really enjoyed Absolute Power. It's a fun movie.
It is.
I don't think it's one of the best. I don't think it's like one of the best. And I think I would go more American Sniper than I mean, the obvious one would be, say, Mystic River, but for some reason I think I like American Sniper more. I think I just think it's a little bit better. I mean, I don't think it's a little bit better. I just like it more.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, then Mystic River. It would be one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these other things, like Play Misty for Me, I've seen a few times. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So that's it's kind of a blast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say those.
Yeah. Okay. Before one more thing. I'm sorry, Mick.
No, of course. Of course.
It just came to me that I didn't ask you. The ending of Hereafter. Do you remember what happened? How it ends with the whole with him meeting the French woman at the cafe, and it kind of goes into this vision.
No.
If you don't remember, we can check back in some other time.
Yeah,
about it. No, but I just the way it ends is so unexpected and inexplicable and inconclusive that when it faded to black, I was like, wait, that's it? That's all? But also, I thought it was one of the most wonderful endings he's ever done. I thought it was just...
Oh, I got to see this.
On a pure filmmaking standpoint, it's beautiful, but I have no idea. I mean, maybe I'm just stupid, but I have no idea what it means or what it's about.
Well, I wish I could. Yeah, I wish I could help you on that because I'm interested. Because I don't even leave a. The thing is I tend not to be able to remember the endings because there's no prompts when I reread my reviews. There's
of course.
Because of course I don't refer to the endings. So.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Thank you so much, Mick. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you, and good luck with the podcast. And good to meet you.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
All right, see you later.
Take care.
Bye.
So it's like we almost don't need to go through the old ones.
No.
Especially since you didn't see Josie Wales, right?
No, yeah. I would like to. I'm gonna visit that one. I think that's it's
you'll
on
like
my
it.
list for sure.
Yeah.
Especially because I love westerns and Unforgiven. It was interesting. I think let's just jump into. Let's do it chronologically because.
Sure. Yeah, just say we say the 70s and 80s. The only ones, Honky Tonk Man and Josie Wales are the only ones that are really worth seeking out. The rest are so. But yeah, Unforgiven is really the first one that was truly in that great period.
Yeah, I don't know. I found that movie really interesting for a lot of reasons. I guess a lot of the reasons that Mick was saying he didn't find it all that interesting. One was just the idea of Clint Eastwood being in this movie as sort of the old, forgotten almost assassin, forgotten killer, and then he steps back into that role in the second half of the movie. And I just found that there was something so, I guess there was something beautiful about that picture as, Eastwood being in, it seemed probably at the time being in the latter part of his career. Obviously, it didn't turn out to be that way. But but him being in that part of his career of transitioning to sort of to being a more, I guess, a director that was to be taken more seriously, and someone who is, I guess, getting away from the Western stereotypes. To sort of re-embrace that role for a bit, I think was just like a really beautiful image.
Yeah.
And I love, I don't know, it's a really interesting movie in that he plays a character that has where you start in the beginning of the movie, you figure he has like a lot of honor. You know what I mean? He's got this sort of there's the title crawl and it says, he was a brute and blah blah blah. But then when you see him, he seems like a good father, and he seems like someone who cares about his children and cares about his wife who passed
still
away.
true to his dead wife.
Yeah. And so you see that that's who you're introduced to, that's who you're sort of picturing in the beginning. And then he by the end of the movie, there's kind of almost like this like complete character shift into who he presumably once was.
Right.
And I found that I don't know. I found that exercise really interesting. If not a bit, I mean, it was a bit nihilistic in a certain sense. It has it has a certain, I guess, like finality almost. It's got a certain like, this is what his life is. This is, once a killer, always a killer. Kind of that. I don't know. That's kind of just what I got out of it. But in a certain sense, I mean, I think it has some really interesting. I don't know. It's just got some really, really nice themes. It's got some and also the cast is incredible. I mean,
my gosh,
it's such a good cast.
That's a hell of a top 4 on your film. Richard Harris,
definitely.
Gene Hackman
as
holy
the sheriff
shit!
He's just
oh my
incredible.
God, yeah, that scene in the jailhouse where he gives him the gun and that whole thing.
Oh, it's so good. It's so
that's
tense.
Like chilling.
I mean,
yeah.
And that's kind of what I found interesting about it was, I don't know. That's one of the things that I end up loving about Leone movies, and I've I guess grown to really appreciate about those spaghetti westerns is like they're not really geared around sort of telling a cohesive narrative in many ways. I mean, they are to a sense, but they're kind of pastiches of the Western format, but really what they do is ramp up the tension and ramp up the sort of like the anxiety of being, you know, being in a 3-man gun battle, or being in, you know, like that's kind of what they embody, and it's something that Eastwood I think took to Unforgiven, was really being able to portray, I guess, the anxiety and the tension of the time period. I mean, there's so many scenes with the sheriff when he comes in, into the bar, that second time when Eastwood and the other two are up in the room, and Eastwood is sitting there, you know, he's not even drinking, he's just sitting there cold, you know, and it's just this long drawn out scene of, you know, he's armed obviously, and you know what happened before with English Bob or whatever, I think his name is. And so yeah, you get this like ramping tension, and but then he marries it with a really interesting story and a really fascinating take on the Western format. One that I guess isn't explored as much, is kind of the aging gunslinger, you know. And I don't know, I just find that I found it really interesting. I found it a great Western.
Yeah, and it has an interesting kind of perspective on the mythology of Westerns and Western movies, where it's taking these sort of things. I mean, the writer is kind of the most literal example of talking about those things, about how things are rewritten and sort of sanitized, I guess you would call them. But also, I just love, and I think in some ways the thing about the movie that sticks with me the most is the portrayal of violence and killing in the movie is just so unlike any Western. It's just so horrible. That whole scene where they kill the guy for the first time, the first guy they kill behind the rocks. It's like so long and so drawn out. And I mean, I think Morgan Freeman's acting when he like can't shoot him is just incredible. And then also Eastwood sitting there and he's like playing with the rocks as they are waiting for him to die.
I love that shot. I love that shot of with Ned. He's kind of facing backwards and his head's down, and then the young kid is looking out, you know, to see the guy dying, and then Eastwood's character he's tossing the rocks against the other rock, kind of ashamed, and there's a certain like I don't know. There's a certain shame about what they're doing, even though they know in their mind they've justified it as, well, they get what they deserve basically, and they shouldn't have cut up those women, and it wasn't right what they did, blah blah blah.
Right.
And in a certain sense, we also feel that as well. I mean, the movie introduces, I mean, the first scene of the movie is them cutting up the girls, and we sort of see the injustice of the sheriff coming in, basically just being like, well, it's fine, they're just whores basically. Mm-hmm. And so we see that play out, and it almost like at that moment where they feel ashamed of what they're doing, you feel the dissonance of like, well, obviously it's not right for these people to be going after, these two cowboys. But at a certain sense, we want them to die as well. We're kind of in that same position.
And even more weirdly, the ending of the movie, it's unambiguous. With the first guy they kill, it is more, because that guy was actually not hurting the women, and he was the more contrite of the two of them. So that's just even more painful. I mean, Eastwood's character doesn't even know that at that point or at any point.
Right.
But as an audience member, you're like, wow, this guy really was not. He really didn't deserve to die. But even at the end, it's a fascinating combination of things, of feelings, because you completely want Gene Hackman to get killed. I mean, after they kill Morgan Freeman, you are like, oh, fuck this guy. Like, you better get him Clint Eastwood. But at the same time, I also find that ending to be, the way I described it, is like an alcoholic's relapse. I mean, it is this sort of, I mean, he literally starts drinking again. I mean, then that scene, I think the best scene in the movie is him standing by the tree with the kid, and the kid is drinking because he's just killed a guy for the first time. Yeah. And then that woman comes over and tells him what happened to Ned, and then he just takes that bottle and he starts drinking again. You're feeling like you're seeing a man reverting back to his lesser qualities and the qualities that his wife had stamped out of him, even at the same time as you are rooting for him and you want him to kill Gene Hackman. And so it's like you're feeling kind of the dissonance of the classic Western thing of getting the bad guy, with also the more real feeling of like even violence at its most justified is scarring and horrible.
Yeah. I would put it up there as one of probably my favorite modern Western. I guess that and True. I think I like True Grit a little bit better, but
True Grit is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. But in any case, I mean, I think he said a lot that was really interesting about I guess the cycle of violence and vigilantism and sort of like I said, once a killer, always a killer. And I think he develops that in a really interesting way in Mystic River. I mean, I thought one of the most interesting things about that movie was, I guess, the way that he looks at past trauma is like really profound. I think there's something there's something really deep about the fact that he is he's exploring the idea of I guess your own assumptions about someone who would have been in a bad situation as a child, and as he's kind of making this is Robin's character, as he's kind of making this I guess descent, he's kind of, his mind is kind of going a little bit. He has that sequence with his wife talking about the vampires, which I love that scene. I think it's incredible. But you kind of get the feeling that the movie is hinting at him being the killer, and Lawrence Fishburne's character being the kind of, he jumps to the conclusion, I guess, but like he's following those leads and seeing it stack up, seeing all the evidence, and you're seeing it too. I mean, you start to question his account of things too, because you don't see obviously what happens to him.
Right.
And I guess when you hear him first say, oh, there was a mugger, blah blah blah, I didn't believe him. I thought there was something wrong with his story. It didn't add up. And I think you kind of get that in his performance. Speaking of, I mean, just an incredible cast. Incredible cast, like wall to wall, masterclass performances. I mean, every one of those.
Sean Penn has a couple, two or three really just incredible. Just scenes where he just goes all out. I think they had oxygen on set or something like that in the scene where he discovers his daughter. I mean, that's really an incredible sequence. And actually underrated in that scene too is deserves some credit is Kevin Bacon, because I think the way he plays the reaction of realizing it is the daughter and like, what am I going to tell this guy, is actually really powerful as well. And that coupled with the pyrotechnics of Penn's performance, and also the score too, which is very effective in that scene. Clint wrote the music actually, but that movie is just, it plunges you into just incredible pain and horror of human existence, and and doesn't really let up at any point. I mean, it's not really redemptive or hopeful
No.
by the end of it. I mean, it really is just like so awful.
No, I mean there's like the tiniest glimmer of hope when he points his finger gun at Sean Penn's character, but
right.
But even then, there's sort of like this sad, and it's almost poetic in a way. It being a finger gun across the parade or whatever is happening, is kind of in a way saying like even true justice is kind of hampered and is not very effective,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I found Sean Penn's arc really, really compelling.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of Prisoners, actually.
Yes.
Which I think
So.
I'm
sorry, I don't know. There are like deer walking right by my window.
Oh, that's
hilarious. It's very comical. Anyway, sorry, Cameron.
No,
it is like a lot like Prisoners. I agree.
I think Prisoners is a little bit more like visceral and raw of a movie, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's much. This takes kind of the more emotional side of things, and Prisoners is very much about like the mystery and about the what happens when you're pushed to that extreme,
right?
Which this is to an extent, but I don't know. I thought Sean Penn's arc was very, very believable. I thought it was very like you could imagine what would you do to find your daughter's killer? What lengths would you go to? And and it's not until the scene where he's gone too far, basically, till we actually know the truth, till the audience knows the truth. So I mean, up until a point where I absolutely love that shot of Tim Robbins getting into the back seat of the car.
Oh.
And the other guy turns around and he looks behind him as he's driving down the street, and it's just like
the priest where he puts his hand over, right?
No. The second time.
Okay.
When he gets into
with the two brothers.
Yes. And
yes.
they do
absolutely
the same shot.
Yeah.
And it just it gave me chills. I was like it's incredible.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And so it kind of, I don't know, it's a very recurring theme for Eastwood is the way that violence like carries on, the way that violence it almost regurgitates more violence. It sort of bleeds into the next thing, and it starts with one and ends in everybody.
Yeah, and ultimately there's no redemption. It's so funny. I never even thought about the Unforgiven. I'm making all these parallels as I watch all these movies.
Yeah.
But the Unforgiven Mystic River one, for some reason, never snapped it until you mentioned that. But that is completely true. I mean, both begin with an act of violence, an act of sexual violence, actually.
Yeah.
And then it's just a series of people, retaliating back, and it just being a complete. No one is saved by the end of it. No one is redeemed by the end of it. It's just nightmarish. But oddly, his movies, I don't find. It's weird because as dark as they get, I don't find them to be nihilistic the way like a Lars von Trier or the other guys who probe really dark subject matter seem to be.
In fact,
or the Coen brothers.
I don't even think that. Yeah, they're definitely not as nihilistic as Coen brothers movies, but they're also not as sort of like, I guess just like generally fucked up as like Fincher's movies even. Like Fincher has a like almost a perverse liking of it, like for exploring those themes. Like it seems like he kind of gets almost like enjoyment out of leaving you really unsatisfied with the end. Which I like. I think is totally good, and it's totally something that he could do. But Eastwood, it's almost like disgusting to him. like
yeah, it's like
everything that he's seeing
omniscient
is,
sadness.
yeah,
I guess
yeah,
that's how I
exactly,
describe it.
exactly.
The whole point, God's point of view that Mick was talking about,
Sure,
actually,
yeah.
is kind of the feeling at the end of Mystic River, where you're looking at a parade, which is kind of like the most idyllic point of view of a city, and really what's beneath the surface is just this horrible nightmare.
Yeah.
And then he sort of hits the hammer home with the shot of the river and looking at the last shot is of the water, right? He's looking down at the water. Yeah, that's really good. Did you see what I meant when whenever years ago when Spotlight came out, how I said I listed Eastwood as one of the guys who could have directed that movie better? Because that could have been a fit, Yeah, that's a good movie. There's a few things in that movie, watching it again, that I just felt were a little kept it back from being as good as some of the other ones. Like I wasn't sure if I felt like the thing with Laura Linney at the end kind of came out of nowhere. I'm not sure if you agree with that, but
I do. Yeah, I do sort of know what you mean, but in a sense, I feel like the story is concluded by that point, in like a real, like everything that happens after he kills Tim Robbins is kind of denouement. It's not really all that important in the story.
Sure.
But I kind of get what you mean. Is like
her being like that just seemed like a little. I was like, oh wait, where did this come from?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because it's like exactly how Laura Linney plays the wife on Ozark too.
Oh really?
Which is really fun to see her kind of as a younger version almost of.
So there's a bunch of people in this movie who are from TV shows you like, right? Because isn't the girl from Shameless?
Yeah, Emmy Rossum. She's
briefly
the daughter who dies.
Yeah. What was the other thing I was gonna say about? Oh, and I just felt like as the mystery part of the movie was compelling. It's not bad, but I do think that the best parts of the movie are the exploration of the trauma and the PTSD of Robin's character, and of the kind of inward inability to express himself of Penn's character, of how it's almost like he doesn't have the language, or having your daughter be killed, probably none of us would be prepared for something like that, but him in particular, there's this quality of that scene where he's talking to his father-in-law, where they're talking about beer, and they just immediately get angry with each other because they both really have no ability to even soften themselves, even 1% of themselves.
Well, and then he brings it back later when he's talking to Tim Robbins' character about the fact that he can't cry. And Robbins brings it, and he's well, but you're crying now, so
that's a great scene.
And then he stops, immediately when Robbins points it out.
Right.
And it's just so, I think it's a really, in the same way that Prisoners does it, it's sort of an exploration of the sort of, I don't even want to quote the term, but almost like the frail masculinity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a cliche, but it is a true thing that there are people who struggle with the ability to, because walking through your whole life and being completely against any kind of sensitivity is unhealthy. I mean, that's not untrue. And I feel like actually a lot of his movies, even just the ones that you saw, I think there's a number. American Sniper, in many ways, I feel like is like that. There's another person who doesn't possess the language to deal with the trauma he's
dealing with.
And I think it's an interesting thing that a lot of his movies, for his machismo image as a star in the 70s, he makes a lot of movies about vulnerability and about male vulnerability, and when we get to Richard Jewell, we can talk about that, because I really think a big part of that movie is the sensitivity between those two men in that movie. But I guess, should we move on to $1 Million Baby?
Yeah, let's do it.
So tell me what you thought.
Yeah, I thought $1 Million Baby was interesting, although I didn't necessarily think it was like mind-blowing. I was very affected by the story. Obviously, it was a very dark movie. I mean, it was just devastating.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know. I didn't feel all that connected to maybe the beginning half of the movie. I guess it just didn't draw me in, I guess, as much as I would have liked. And there definitely is like an extreme tonal shift in the movie. I mean, it's just like it's just like a left turn.
I mean, you think you're watching Rocky. I mean, at a certain point,
exactly.
He spends so much time on the fights and of all the different wins, and you're just like, oh wow, this is like a very low key female Rocky.
Yes,
with a lot of shadowy lighting. But I don't know. Personally, because I hadn't seen $1 Million Baby. I only saw it once, probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and so rewatching that and then rewatching all the other great ones. It is my favorite. I do think it's his best movie. Yeah, I was just blown away. I just find the whole thing very moving. I find this sort of. I want to actually bring up Mick's review because he put it very nicely, and I thought it was such an interesting thing that what he compared it to. I think it's one of his best pieces of writing he's ever written. And in his review, he compared the movie not to another film, but to Lincoln's second inaugural speech, where Lincoln, looking back on the bloodbath of the Civil War and anticipating more carnage to come, quoted Psalms, "The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether." Lincoln wasn't an old man, just an old soul, but the trainer is an old man, and so is Eastwood. The weight of years is in $1 Million Baby, technically, artistically, and philosophically. It has the gloom and the transcendence of an old man's wisdom. It feels like the whole movie is just a summation of someone looking back on life and just all the devastation that comes in just an average life. I mean, before the tragedy, I mean, it's still a pretty sad situation. Yeah. There's just such a sense of aspirations and lost dreams in the whole boxing gym, the whole history of Morgan Freeman being this, champion who just ends up living in the gym the rest of his life. And also I find that it's so moving, just his sort of dignity in that he as much as he's been dealt such a terrible card in life, he shows such kindness to everyone, like the guy who comes in every day, the sort of mentally challenged guy, and all the I don't know, and he just lives in there. And I love the exchange between him and Eastwood about their socks with holes in them. I just think that's just so wonderful. It's a beautifully written movie. And then just the idea of him developing this sort of father-daughter relationship with her is just so moving. And I think when The Irishman came out, I kind of compared The Irishman in some ways to Eastwood's movies. And even though they're not exactly stylistically the same, though it does kind of remind me of the end of The Irishman, where it gets really stark and cold.
Yeah.
And Eastwood is probably a little bit less cold in his vision, but they both have this quality of just making you look really hard at all the pain and suffering in life and having to accept it and live with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I really loved the I guess how it just didn't conclude with anything that you would consider to be like redemption in Eastwood's character. I mean, he
not really. I mean,
he like his character is challenged in a couple different ways, right? First and foremost, he's challenged by the partner. I keep wanting to call him Ned because that's what he was.
Unforgiven.
I know his name's not.
Aren't they just a great pairing, those two?
Like,
I wish they would do another
incredible.
movie where they're both in their 80s, and that'd just be so wonderful,
Oh yeah, it would be so nice. But so he's challenged by Morgan Freeman's character in that he sort of sees him as holding on to too long to try to protect those that that he cares for.
Mm.
And in a way, it's almost like because of Morgan Freeman, like there's this almost debt relationship that Eastwood has to the rest of his other fighters, and because of that, Freeman's character feels almost like it's his fault that he doesn't get the victory. It's his fault that he doesn't see his fighters through to the belt. And then when they have that sort of blow up after the accident, when they have when Eastwood says it's your fault, that you brought her here, you told, if she didn't train with me, this never would have happened to her. And like it's almost like reconfirming everything that he wanted to avoid, that they both wanted to avoid.
Exactly. Yeah, the whole movie is about how it's like you go through your whole life avoiding, taking the next step, avoiding risk, because if you take that risk, you can have something really wonderful can happen, but also it can end in tragedy, like it did for Morgan Freeman. And it's like Eastwood, until he meets Maggie, has closed himself off from that his whole life. And then it's just,
and then he opens it up, and then
the pain of the fact that he finally accepts it, and then it just is like the worst possible thing that could possibly happen is heartbreaking. But I mean,
and the fact that you also don't get you don't get justice in that movie either.
No.
I mean, it's so just like stone cold, you know what I mean? Like it's so like you want there to be revenge on the other fighter. You want there to be, you want the parents to turn around and to be loving towards their daughter. Like, oh, that scene was so horrible with the mom, and I mean all the scenes with the mom were horrible, but the one where she's so ungrateful about the house.
I know.
And you're like, oh my goodness, like like it's just terrible. And then Maggie finally, she does something, and she becomes this sort of this mini star, and she wins. There's the victory there,
right?
And then it's all just it's not even for a second. It's just taken away. Just brutally taken away.
What's also a wonderful scene is the one right after where they visit the mother and go to the house where they're driving the car at night. I just loved. It's just so quiet. They stop by the diner, which turns out to be very important. I mean, if I realize I always used to get a slice of lemon meringue pie when I'd wait for the bus to go to the Grand Lake. And then if I see a lemon meringue pie, I'm just gonna start crying because I'm just gonna think about that diner and Clint in the diner, man. Yeah. Oh my God. But the scene in the car where they're talking about the dog, and Ebert wrote really beautifully about how the lights in those scenes are not the normal dashboard lights. They're not the constant light. It's like the light is like sliding in and out of them, and like sometimes they're in view. And then I think he has a split frame shot where Clint's listening to her and he's up close and she's far away and listening.
It's funny. I saw that a lot in his movies. He's got a ton of them.
A ton in Unforgiven, actually. It's funny. That's a weird thing about Eastwood is you don't think of him as any kind of stylist or flashy director. Yeah. He's about as opposite from someone like De Palma as could be, where De Palma, a big part of it is the showmanship. But Eastwood is sort of like, he uses the split diopter just because it's the most literal. It's just like, oh, you want to see two people in the shot, so I'm going to show you two people.
I don't know, because I think there's a little bit more thought that goes into it, obviously.
Oh, I mean,
but,
sure, yeah.
But I think it's funny because his filmmaking isn't necessarily stylistic, but it is, in that all of his films are cohesive. All of his films, there's something about his. And it's not just the characters that he writes. It's not just the way that he directs, actors. There's something really, really coherent about what, like, his shot choice and his
you
his
could
framing,
identify a movie by even though
absolutely,
it's not
I was noticing about
distinct.
Richard Jewell too, because it was the last one that I saw,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like, even as his most most recent movie, like it totally is an Eastwood movie. It's totally clear.
The main thing for me that's distinct, I think, is the way he likes to shoot a lot of coverage on steady cams, and he kind of moves it around, a lot. He's got this guy he's worked with for years named Stephen Campanelli, who I think is maybe kind of an unsung big part of his filmmaking team, because he's like second unit director and Steadicam operator, and he's just always like roving around the actors, and it's always gets this sort of interesting coverage on them.
I think we should move on to Richard Jewell, because I gotta get going pretty soon. But
sure. Yeah, I guess we could. Yeah, I mean, you saw Gran Torino and American Sniper years ago, probably, but we kind of talked about those already anyway. And the only thing I would say about where we get to Richard Jewell is that I feel like there's sort of a break in his style between the Mystic River to Hereafter period and then the like American Sniper period, where it's like American Sniper and beyond, it seems like he's stripped back his style a lot. Like it's less of the shadows, less of the kind of almost operatic sort of quality with he uses much less music also. It just feels very, very stripped down. Like he has this kind of like late style where it's just down to the essential elements of the filmmaking.
Yeah. It's very naturalistic too. I mean, like in his later movies, you kind of don't. I don't know. Like you're saying, you don't really get the hard lighting. You don't really get the tons of shadows and whatnot. And it is funny because $1 Million Baby is very it's like it has a ton of like really impressionistic lighting. I mean, it's gorgeous. But then like you were saying in Richard Jewell, I think he also he kind of has moved towards like almost a historical
Right.
he I don't know, he's more interested in sort of real events in the latter half of his movies.
Yeah, I completely forgot about it. Actually, also after Hereafter is the last movie he did that is about fictional characters. Every other one has been a biopic, and 4 of those, including Richard Jewell, are movies about American heroes or quote unquote American heroes, and
then even before that with Letters from Iwo Jima, like and Invictus, before Hereafter, like both of those are about about real events. So he kind of has worked that in, but I mean pretty much ever since Letters from Iwo Jima, you have this. He basically only does biopics, only does like actual like historical.
Yeah, I guess. Other than Gran Torino and Hereafter. Yeah, that's true.
And it's kind of, I don't know, it's strange in a way, but that kind of has been his shift in focus, and it's possible that that's because he, as he's gotten older, he kind of understands maybe the importance of real characters, of portraying real characters, and I guess in some ways the idea of truth being stranger than fiction, and there's obviously an interest in, he obviously has an interest in sort of these I guess like outcast, unusual characters.
So what did you think of Richard Jewell? I'm very curious because this film is a hotly debated film in my household. Tell me what you think.
I really liked it. I thought it was great. I don't know. I think the first third of the movie is a little bit weak. I mean, it's just a little bit slow. I kind of didn't get it. Didn't get that interested in it until after he gets the lawyer involved, after the FBI comes to basically do the non-confrontational interview the first time, and that's kind of when the ball gets rolling. I think that's where it really picks up for me in it being this delicate balance of caring about Richard as a character, but also, I mean, Sam Rockwell, he's incredible. He's so good. But yeah, his sort of like righteous indignation, and the way that he's like, why aren't you mad at these people? Why aren't you mad at these people who ruined your life, who have destroyed you? And you're just gonna sit there. You're gonna defend them. You're gonna be, you're gonna be deferential. And so there's something really interesting about that. And then on the other side of things, I know people really didn't like, I guess, the portrayal of the media, or else I should say the media.
Olivia Wilde.
The media didn't like the portrayal of the media.
It really was. When I went through Twitter, I was like, wait, let me click on each person's thing. And it's like reporter.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh, give me a break. I thought the movie was far more sympathetic to her actually than the FBI. And then I would have expected based on how people were talking about it, because in many ways I feel like you could almost I feel like he's making a parallel between her and Richard in that both of them are overzealous in doing their job.
Yes, yeah.
At first you sort of see Olivia Wilde as being just like, oh, she just wants to get the story and she's just very cynical. But by the end of it, you're like, no, she actually did care about getting it right, and she actually felt bad that she didn't get it right.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing two people who are. Go ahead.
I love the scene with the mom at the press conference. I mean, it's just devastating. It's so
Kathy
good.
Bates. She should have beat Laura Dern, man, for the best supporting.
I kind of agree at this point now, seeing that performance. I mean, it's just she was so good. She's phenomenal. And then Olivia, the shot of Olivia Wilde in the back, and she's like you had seen her come to the conclusion before that, and then you saw the confrontation with the FBI agent, and at that point you're like she's not emotionally invested in this, but she sees kind of like, oh, like I got this wrong, like she's finding it to be like a dereliction of her duties that she got it wrong, and she wants to make amends in that way. But then when she sees Bobby, she puts it together, like personally, like she sees what her actions directly have done to this family. And it's so funny because in I think all of the movies that I've watched of Eastwood's, it's almost the first like actual shot of someone recognizing what they did wrong and being sorry for it. Like it's
like when they kill a guy in Unforgiven, you mean, like that sort of thing? Or
I think that, well, even then, I mean, she has like a real I hate to say it, but a real like come to Jesus moment, like she has a real like, oh, I actually like ruined someone's life. And even in Unforgiven, like there's that scene of under the tree, and he says, I ain't never gonna be a killer again. But it's almost like he's reconciled with what he's done at that point, even, and so and Eastwood's character obviously goes the full opposite route, but after that, but in I can't remember any other scenes from the movies that I saw of someone like actually being sorry for something that they did.
Well, I mean, actually, off the top of my head, Gran Torino, there's a whole part where the guy's getting beaten up when he comes back from work, his friend, the Hmong guy. Yeah. And then so he goes to the gang members and he like beats up one of them and he says, I'll kick your ass. And he has his sort of typical response. And then right after that, they shoot up the house and they beat up the sister. And then that's when Clint goes home and it's very clear that it's like he's realized, like, I escalated this situation. I took something that was bad and I made it worse. Yeah, and I have to find a different way that I'm used to, because he's lived his whole life responding to things with aggression and with violence, and he has to find a way that's that's different than that because he's just making it worse. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm sure there are other ones you could think of like that. I thought about it longer. But yeah, I like the arc of Wilde's character in Richard Jewell, and I think that whole thing is
me too.
It was discussed in a way that I even think the whole thing about her sleeping with a guy for getting information, that seems like that was misrepresented, because she has said, Olivia Wilde and Eastwood has said, that the way the writing is not that she's doing it as quid pro quo, it's that they're in a relationship at that moment, which seems to be in line with what you're seeing in the movie, because they're flirting with each other and they seem to know each other before the bombing takes place.
They were before. I mean, I would say it's probably safe to assume, I guess, like she's just doing it for the story, and that's kind of how she treats it.
I don't know.
But I don't think that's necessarily a wrong way to portray this character, because like you said, I mean, it makes it interesting. It gives her a different sort of dynamic of I don't know.
Of being incredibly driving to get the story.
Yeah.
And it's only character assassination if you believe that a woman doing that is wrong. I mean, the character, the thing that makes her a bad person is, or not a bad person, but that makes the thing about her that is rightly criticized is that she got the story wrong and she ruined this guy's life. That's what's being criticized, and because that's what happened. The whole how she got the information really doesn't matter either way, and it doesn't change what I would think about her. The main point is she got the story wrong.
Yeah, it's true.
But I thought that was sympathetically handled. But to me, the part of the movie that I just think is just so wonderful is I think he's just such an interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's sort of I like that even from the very first scene of the movie, really, you're seeing a guy who everything he does to make people like him more, to try and get something good out of life, digs him deeper into trouble. When he's being interrogated, when he's trying to seem like their friend, it's just supporting their thesis that this is the guy. Everything, it's like he's in a no-win situation just by the cards he's dealt, by what he looks like, how he is, his kind of socially awkward demeanor with people.
Yeah. The fact that he lives with his mother.
He lives with his mother. He has a bunch of guns. He just seems like he's that type of person.
Right.
It's easy to fill in the blanks with him. But it's like that first scene with Sam Rockwell where he's given him all his tape and he's put a bunch of Snicker bars in his drawer.
Yeah.
It's like, in Richard's head, he thinks like, he'll become friends with me because he does this. But really, like, Sam Rockwell is like really creeped out by it.
He's like, don't go through my trash. Like,
yeah. But it's only out of the compassion of Sam Rockwell looking beyond his initial creeped outness by this guy that he ends up becoming friends with him. Because at that middle of the movie, in that scene where they have that argument, isn't that what Richard says? He's like, you're the only guy who showed me any respect, who treated me like a human being.
Yeah.
You're like, man, this is just a guy who, like, no one, all the cops at the Centennial Park are like, what? Every time he brings up something that might be a danger, they just act like he's overly paranoid.
Right.
And he is. That's the other interesting thing is Eastwood makes a point of showing him really doing things that are incorrect. I mean, the whole scene in the dorm room, I mean, is completely inappropriate what he's doing, barging into the room. But that's the parallel I was getting at with him and the reporter of, like, they're both going too far with their jobs. It's just that happened that his paranoia and his obsessiveness with his job happened that he was actually right on this one important moment and saved, hundreds of lives. But it's sort of it's an interesting thing to say about heroism, that you could the overzealousness that makes you a hero also can make you totally be wrong and do something really terrible.
Yeah. What do they say? Like, heroes are like one step away from psychopaths, or like they're sort of they're cut from the same cloth in that way. And I think that's true. And I think well, I don't. To be honest, I don't know if that's true, but I think Eastwood really portrays that well.
And in American Sniper too, actually,
definitely,
you could apply that quote too.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, anyways, I think I should get going because my laptop is about to die. So.
Oh shit. Okay. Well, thanks for talking about these, Cameron.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun doing like a little deep dive. Since I wasn't really that familiar with his work outside of his acting work.
I'm glad you liked all. It sounded like you liked all of them. Which do you think was your favorite out of all of them?
I don't know. It might have been Mystic River. I think I connected with that one the most.
Okay.
But I liked them all. I was really a fan of all of them. I was thinking about. I've got 1517 to Paris on DVD. So
you do?
Yeah, I might.
How do you have that on DVD?
I think my dad has it. It's not mine, but so I think
you must be the only person who owns that movie.
Yeah, I think I could pop that in and turn it off halfway through.
It's worth checking out, and actually the scene at the end where they show the real attack is great. It's actually a great scene.
Yeah. I would say recommend me like the couple that I should see. Is it Changeling
in A Perfect World and Josie Wales would be the next three, definitely.
All right.
And if I'm recommending to the listener what I think are the best, $1 Million Baby and Unforgiven are definitely my favorites.
Yeah.
And I'd throw in Josie Wales and I think Richard Jewell is in my top 5 too. I really was really affected by that movie and so surprised, just like out of nowhere at 89 years old, he makes one of his best movies. I mean, that's crazy. But yeah, Clint Eastwood is definitely one of my. Having seen all 38 of his movies, he's definitely one of my favorite directors. And I look forward to seeing what other weird and strange movies he continues to make.
Yeah,
in his 90s.
I hope he keeps going for a while because he's really kind of come into his own in a sense.
Yeah.
Really, since the 2000s, he's just kind of blossomed as a filmmaker.
Anyway,
as well as you gave me your recommendations. I'm supposed to give you a recommendation of something to watch.
Oh, right. Yeah. We got interrupted in the middle of our Warrior discussion, but
it's true.
Cameron, that was so
movie,
wonderful. I don't know if I want to send you the picture of me crying afterwards, but my mom, it was like I'm watching the last minutes of the movie and I'm like holding my face, like weeping. And my mom comes in, she's like, "Hey, I want to ask," and then she just looks at me and she's like, and she like leaves the room.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible, but I'm on 1%, so I'm gonna give this to you.
Yeah.
You should watch Ozark, the first season. I know that's a lot to give you.
No. Fair enough.
But it's incredible. It's great. It's great filmmaking. Jason Bateman weirdly has like this like directorial like spark, and it's just it's so good. So I would say watch Ozark for sure.
Okay, I'll check that out, Cameron. For right now, take care, Cameron. I'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
All right, later, man.
Bye.
So tenderly, your story is nothing more than what you see or what you've done or will become. Standing strong, do you belong in your skin? Just wondering. Gentle now, the tender breeze blows, whispers through my Gran Torino, whistling another tired song.